Hello, this is Chris, and Star Wars is back in full effect with Star Wars Celebration Orlando 2017. Unfortunately, I am not out there this year. I was at Star Wars Celebration last year in London, and I'm absolutely gutted that I'm not there right now, queuing up in line overnight for wristbands and everything that goes along with it. So, as of right now, stereotypically some might say, I am just a humble Star Wars fan in his room, talking about Star Wars, going through every single day of Celebration and discussing what I watched, basically. As I said, unfortunately, didn't get to see this stuff in person. I have been sitting behind a computer screen and watching this stuff on live streams on the Star Wars YouTube page. And I'm just going to be giving my rundown on the day, my thoughts on any new news that's come out or on the panels. I'm going to do my best to try and get some content out every single day if I can. I'm recording this in the UK very late at night. It's almost 11:30 in the PM. I've just watched the live stream. It's still going on right now, but I believe the bulk of the panels have finished. So by the time this goes up, it will probably be Friday, but this is my commentary on Thursday, the 13th of April, and I've got 4 specific panels that I want to talk about today. So we're kicking off with the 40 years of Star Wars and the tribute to Carrie Fisher. Now, just saying that, 40 years of Star Wars. I, of course, wasn't around when this was first a thing in 1977, but looking at my wall now, I am looking at a 30th anniversary poster that I have on my wall. I'll probably throw a picture up on the video right now. It's one of my favourite posters in my room, and I remember my friend bought me that clearly, obviously 10 years ago, and my god, how time flies. So I'm sure that's exactly what it's like for fans that grew up with this thing since it started. So 40 years of Star Wars kicks off with a really nice video montage of, you know, just how they made Star Wars and sort of a look back, a general introduction to the show, and it was incredible. We follow that up with Kathleen Kennedy coming out on stage and introducing a big guest, and I can't remember her words exactly, but I knew exactly who she was alluding to. Everyone in the room did, and George Lucas walks right out on stage. It's incredible to see him on stage. Say what you want about the guy, you know, what he did with the prequels or Indiana Jones Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, anything like that, and even he himself was humble enough to draw reference to that and say that he hasn't been the most popular guy as of recent years or over the years. But it was awesome to see him there, and he absolutely had to be there because it was the 40th anniversary. That's a huge landmark for Star Wars. I can only imagine what this thing is going to look like in 10 years' time when it hits 50. But it was nice to see him out there, and Warwick Davis was the interviewer, and he was sort of chatting to George about how he came up with the idea, his time with the franchise, how he's seen it grow, how it developed over time, and in typical George Lucas fashion, he was very much that kind of socially awkward guy, very mumbly. Everyone has their own George Lucas impression. I have my own. I'm not going to do that right now, so I'll save myself the embarrassment. But as I said, it was amazing to see him there, and it didn't just stop there either, because the amount of Star Wars talent they had come out on stage was amazing. And this was me just watching at home on a live stream, and I was fanboying out of my seat the entire thing. I can only imagine what it would have been like to have been there. So if anyone's listening to this, if you're out there now, you're going to be focused on Star Wars right now, or queuing up, quite rightly so. Maybe you'll see this after you get back, but if anyone is there right now or is watching this stuff in general, I'd love to get you guys commenting on this and telling me about some of your favourite Star Wars stories as well. But right after that, they followed it up with the likes of Anthony Daniels, Billy Dee Williams, and I love Billy Dee Williams, came out as suave as ever in his shades. He's still got the smoothness of Lando, so it was great to see him on the couch. We had Peter Mayhew as well, Chewbacca, and there was also Mark Hamill, Ian McDiarmid, the Emperor, and actually one of the biggest surprises, well, there were 2 huge surprises. 3, I guess, if you include George Lucas. I've already talked about him. They bring Hayden Christensen out. Now, everyone has talked about the prequels. There are many, many reviews out there on the internet, and people aren't exactly too kind to Hayden Christensen or generally the character of Anakin, and I can agree with them to an extent. The character isn't great in those films. By the way, I am not going to sugarcoat my opinions on Celebration or Star Wars in general. I'm just going to keep this completely real with you guys. These are obviously my opinions, so do with them what you will. But I hold no ill will against the guy. He was an actor who I think he'd done a lot of TV in Canada. I haven't seen any of his previous shows before Star Wars, but Star Wars was his first big break. And as any actor, if you get the part of the lead character in some brand new Star Wars films, you are going to be absolutely out of your mind to turn that opportunity down. And the fact that, you know, George Lucas isn't exactly a people person, and as a director, he doesn't give much direction, especially to his actors. Some may see that as a good thing. Some like to go into a character completely free rein and do with the character what they will. Some actors need guidance, especially when you're on a set that's full of green screens and you're having to do a lot of imagination. For an actor that was really his first big break in Hollywood, that can be tough. And the scripts, I promise I'm not going to turn this into a prequel hate video, but it's very difficult to make that material work. And even when Mark Hamill came out, he said that, and I can't remember the line verbatim, but it's this line that was cut from the movie in the end, and it was this huge, long-winded, exposition-filled space jargon of a paragraph that he had to say. And, you know, he still remembered it to this day, like, he can still quote it, but he said, like, it's very difficult to make that material work. The sentence makes sense on paper, but it's very difficult to get that across in a performance and make the dialogue sound naturalistic and off the cuff. So I imagine that Hayden had that exact problem. But it was great seeing him come out for it, especially with the 40th anniversary, and he was a relative newcomer with the prequels. Mind you, I say relative newcomer with the prequels. They came out in 99. I was 6 years old. I'm currently 24. So the years are flying by, and it's getting scarier and scarier, and it's going to continue to get scarier. But the biggest surprise for me was to see Harrison Ford come out, because, you know, he was very welcome back to the Star Wars franchise with The Force Awakens, but I always chalk that up with the fact that, you know, he was finally done with the franchise now. Can I spoil the fact that Han Solo dies at the end of Force Awakens? I mean, that movie's almost 2 years old, and that's still like a weird thing for me to talk about, the death of Han Solo. I still feel like it's a big spoiler for some reason. It was great seeing him come out, and he seemed a lot more energetic this time. He seemed a lot more with it, happy to be here. And as I said, I didn't expect him out, because I thought now his character bowed out, that he was thankful of that, and he could now distance himself from Star Wars, because he has had a very turbulent relationship with Star Wars over the past. He'll say that himself. There was actually a great bit after the show, I know I'm jumping ahead a little bit here, where he was talking to one of the presenters in between the panels, and he said to him, and George Lucas was there too, and the interviewer said, "You are watching these films as a fan now, because, you know, George Lucas doesn't have any involvement, Harrison Ford isn't part of them. Are you looking forward to the upcoming Han Solo spin-off?" And Harrison Ford was just like, not really. And you can't help but laugh, because he does have that gruff quality about him, but it looked like he genuinely does have that respect. I'm sure a lot of actors go through that, especially if they are tied to such a legacy character and a prominent character that everyone talks about, no matter how many conventions you go to or how many signings you go to. They're always going to keep comparing you to that character, and I can imagine that an actor who works in the arts, who is a very creative person, is always looking for that next character and something different, and wants to distance themselves from that. But this leads me on to the next show, tribute to Carrie Fisher. So obviously there's a huge integral cast member of the original Star Wars missing. Two, you could argue. I'll get onto that in a minute. And that was obviously Carrie Fisher. Now, she was at the London celebration last year, and I'm just so glad that I went to that, because I got to meet her. I mean, later that year, what was it, like 5 or 6 months after that, she'd passed away. And Kenny Baker as well. He died a month after celebration. And when I looked at him, I could tell that he didn't look in a particularly good way. And the tribute was very touching. It was the highlight of the entire day, I would say. I'm sure a lot of people will say that. Although I did find, and this is probably my only criticism, although they did refer to it, they didn't really make a big fuss about Kenny Baker. And I can understand why to some extent, because Carrie Fisher was clearly a more prominent character for a start. She was actually on camera. She played the integral character of Princess Leia, had a lot more going on, and Kenny Baker was in the droid costume, did the movements, and didn't get any screen time. So I can understand why they made a bigger focus of Carrie Fisher. But even so, like, Carrie Fisher got a video tribute, very, very touching ceremony all around, but Kenny Baker really didn't get anything. I think he got a brief mention by Warwick Davis at the beginning of the stream, where he says, "And last year we obviously lost Kenny and Carrie." and there was a few pictures that came up behind on like a slideshow. And that was about it. There was really no mention from him. I don't even remember George Lucas or Kathleen Kennedy even mentioning Kenny Baker. And that to me was kind of harsh, because he had been there since the beginning of this thing, and he played an integral character. R2-D2 is a prominent character, and he is a fan favourite. I know people whose favourite character is R2-D2, and I think it would have been nice to have remembered the man behind that costume. Even if they'd have put together like a video tribute or some B-roll, some behind the scenes that featured him, I thought that would have been a nice touch. But that being said, the tribute to Carrie Fisher was incredible. They had a very nice video montage of her, which you can actually find on YouTube as a separate video on the Star Wars page. I was fighting back tears. I think the only reason that I didn't fully get invested in it, and this is no fault of Celebration itself, the stream I was watching it on, because there was about 100,000 people watching, it did keep cutting out, it did keep freezing, and the audio did keep dropping out, so that did take me out of the moment as well. Carrie Fisher's daughter did come out on stage as well, Billie Lourd. I thought that was really nice of her, and it was fitting that she be there, and it was incredible. It was incredibly brave of her as well to come out on stage, so full respect to her for that. And the biggest surprise at Celebration for me, and this is where I'm really regretting not buying a ticket to this thing. This trip would have absolutely bankrupted me. I would have had pretty much no money in my bank account at all just to get there and for accommodation or whatever I had to do. But to see John Williams and the Orlando Philharmonic Orchestra there on stage, and apparently Pablo Hidalgo as well, who's sort of the overseer of the entire Star Wars canon, apparently, and he might have been lying, apparently he said that he wasn't aware that John Williams was going to be there, and when the curtains went up and John Williams was there, I was in disbelief, I was in shock, and I fully felt the emotion of that moment. They played the Princess Leia theme, of course, after the video tribute. They then segued into the end titles of Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope, and then they finished with the Imperial March. Again, my stream was cutting out during this, so I couldn't get invested in the music, but just to have been there, even in the presence of John Williams, would have been a dream come true for me, because I'm a huge fan of film scores, and John Williams is one of my favourite composers ever. So that was a fantastic start to Celebration, and the best way to open. It's probably one of the best panels I've ever seen, and it's kick-started the weekend in glorious fashion for the rest of Celebration. So the next panel I want to talk about was the Dave Filoni Animated Origins panel. This was Pablo Hidalgo and Dave Filoni on stage, both talking about the animated series of the Clone Wars and Rebels as well. Unfortunately, the stream I was watching, it couldn't show the artwork that they'd bought, and you could hear all the fans' reactions, so you had to kind of piece things together, and they did a good job of explaining what they were talking about. Although I haven't fully completed watching the Clone Wars, I think I'm on I'm halfway through season 5, I believe. I still need to watch season 6, and actually I haven't watched any of Rebels, so I'm very much behind in terms of the animated content that Disney has been putting out. I was looking at this as more of a fan of animation in general, so it was nice to hear the behind the scenes of how they put together week to week this content, how the characters have changed from their original concept. There was original designs and costumes, and you really got a sense of the development process of shows like this and of characters like this, and that was great to hear. They talked about the characters of Darth Maul from the animated content, moving from Clone Wars, where we meet him, who's apparently still alive. I'm going to go off on a tangent here. I've never liked that fact that Darth Maul's come back to life. I thought that cutting him in half, and it clearly was when the film was made, when Phantom Menace was made, I thought that was a very final end to the character. Not just the fact that he gets cut in half, but how far he falls down that shaft on the Boo. But nevertheless, obviously in the animated thing, it's technically canon now, so I guess I have to accept it. More ludicrous things have happened in the Star Wars universe. But they talked about Maul, especially with Rebels, where he had his final duel with Obi-Wan, so that was nice to get some insight into that. They talked about Ahsoka Tano and Rex, and they also alluded to characters that might be showing up in Season 4 of Rebels. So I think the talk about Season 4 of Rebels is going to be on Saturday, and I'll still make a video about it, regardless of the fact whether I've actually watched Rebels or not. I know most of the key storylines and characters that feature in it, so nothing's really going to get spoilt for me. But they also did allude to characters returning, such as Cad Bane, who was a fan favourite. He was one of my favourite original characters that were created for the Clone Wars, so it'll be great to see him back. They also screened some, I believe it was concept art put to pre-recorded voices of a story arc that sadly never got to come to fruition when the Clone Wars was cancelled, which involved a young Boba Fett, played once again by Daniel Logan, being trained up by Cad Bane to make him the greatest bounty hunter in the galaxy. And I could just hear the the audio on the stream. I couldn't see the screen. I could hear the fans' reaction, so I'm guessing that was great. So that was some nice insight into the animated realm of things. And actually, this will be a good place to talk about it now. A new Star Wars animated show was confirmed earlier today at Celebration called Forces of Destiny, which I think is coming out July, if I remember rightly, or summer, I think it said, summer this year. They're going to be it looked like it was geared to a much younger audience, even younger than Clone Wars, and it looks like they're going to be short stories involving characters that we already know, such as Rey, and Daisy Ridley has come back to provide a voice. There's going to be stories on Jyn Erso, again Felicity Jones coming back to provide her voice for that, and it looks like there's one for Princess Leia on Hoth as well. I really don't know what these stories are going to be. All they say in the trailer is that it's going to provide a chance to flesh out some of these characters a little bit more, to show us stories that take place within events that we know. I was actually curious though with the whole Jyn Erso thing, because I mean, I don't know all of the Star Wars graphic novels and novels in general that are coming out. I thought I heard that a Jyn Erso novel was confirmed and it was going to flesh out her backstory, being trained up by Saw Gerrera. I'm sure all this material was in the original cut of Rogue One. We know that that film went through extensive reshoots and a lot of material was clearly cut out, and even when you watch the film now, I mean, I bought it on Blu-ray on release day and I rewatched it, and especially during that first act, some elements of the second act too, but especially the first act and all the stuff regarding Saw Gerrera and the planet jumping, you can definitely tell that it felt like, I'm going to say it did feel like a jumbled mess, and they did have to cobble that first act together. I absolutely love Rogue One. You can find my review for Rogue One, and indeed all the other Star Wars films on the channel as well. If you just search up Star Wars Review, I think we've got some playlists for some of our Star Wars months as well. But it looks fine. The animation is very different. I know it's all made in a computer, but it does look like it's done with 2D animation. It's not in the style of Rebels, for example, or Clone Wars. If there are any Disney fans listening to this, they've done a new Tangled show on the Disney Channel. It's done in that style of animation. So I'd be lying if I say I was excited for it. I don't really know why we need more of these stories, but it's more Star Wars animated content. I'm sure it's going to have an audience out there with kids. And who knows, maybe I'll watch the Jyn Erso episodes, because I would like to know more about her character, because I feel like that was a big fault of the movie of Rogue One overall. So maybe I can watch this and then go into Rogue One with different eyes. I know you shouldn't have to do that, but it is what it is, and Disney are clearly trying to bank on as much Star Wars stuff as they can, and if it's going to get more kids into the series, or if it's going to be a new avenue and bring in a new audience, then I'm completely fine with that. So after that, we moved to our next panel, which was Ian McDiarmid, Tales from the Dark Side. Now, Ian McDiarmid plays, without a question of a doubt, one of my favourite characters in the Star Wars saga of Emperor Palpatine, or Sheev, I guess I should call him by his official name now, that's canon. It was great to see him out there, and this was Warwick Davis interviewing him, going into a bit of behind the scenes of the character and just Ian McDiarmid's take on the Star Wars franchise overall and his experiences on set and playing the character of the Emperor. And he just seems like a really humble guy. He's a stage actor, he comes from a theatre background, and you can tell that he loves that audience interaction. There's an element to him similar to Harrison Ford, where you can tell that, you know, he doesn't know all the geek questions, and I did find it kind of annoying. It's unavoidable, I guess, though, at conventions like this, when it did get to the Q&A session, and you were getting some people that were just throwing the most geekiest questions at him, and I'm a Star Wars geek myself, so there's always a part of me that would ask Ian McDiarmid to do an impression, but I always hold back because I know that they clearly hear this all the time. So when you get questions such as, did you have any input in the design of the lightsaber? If Mace Windu were to ask your character this, what would you reply with? Just things like that. You know that, you know, Ian McDiarmid is a person. He's not the Emperor 24/7, as much as I wish that were true. So I did get a little bit annoyed at some of the Q&A sections of these panels overall, but you are going to have Star Wars fans doing that. That's fair enough. But as I said, he just seemed really humble, and he seemed like he was genuinely happy to be there. He was brought on earlier at the 40 years of Star Wars. I mentioned that briefly earlier. It was nice to hear him talk there, but for him to get an entire panel dedicated to one of my favourite film villains of all time was incredible. And, you know, it was played for laughs as well as an interview, so they had fun little quiz sections where they got some of the audience involved. They asked them to complete the quote from the Emperor in the film. They talked to Ian about how he created that voice and what his thought thought process for that voice was. And I mean, I didn't know this was new information to me. So he says that when he saw the design of the Emperor when he filmed Return of the Jedi around, I guess it would have been in 82, because it would have been filmed a year before, into 83, he saw this drawing of the Emperor, and he says that he looked very reptilian, almost like toad-like, amphibious. So that was his first reference point for the voice. He imagined a toad-like character and that croak in his voice, and that's what came through in the character. And he talked about the voice comes from the stomach, and when he did the voice, obviously he was going to do the voice on stage, his entire mannerisms changed, and he just manifested into this character of the Emperor and this evil entity. And that's all testament to Ian McDiarmid. Say what you want about the prequels, a lot of people praise Ewan McGregor. The one that they always follow it up with is Ian McDiarmid as the Emperor, and it was a great panel. It was next to the 40 years of Star Wars, it was probably my favourite panel, and it was just nice to see McDiarmid there as well. And actually, I didn't mention earlier at the 40 years of Star Wars, there was a few video messages from Liam Neeson and Samuel Jackson. Liam Neeson jokingly said that he's on set filming another film, and it's a Jar Jar film where he finally turns to the dark side. But it was nice to see that Liam Neeson, even though he didn't play a particularly prominent character, I know that Qui-Gon Jinn does have a lot of fans out there. He didn't really get much to do in the film, sadly, but it's nice to see that Liam Neeson still does have that respect for the character that he played and the experience on set. And Samuel Jackson's just a great person on the mic anyway. And he was saying that he'd love to come back to Star Wars. It's not unheard of in the Star Wars franchise for characters to have limbs cut off or survive from being thrown from great heights. It's not impossible for Mace Windu to come back. And actually, if I remember rightly, I swear around Rebels there was some concept art that was released and everyone thought that Mace Windu was coming back. I'm not sure if that was a legit thing. Evidently it wasn't, because he hasn't showed up in Rebels yet. And hey, I am totally down for a Mace Windu origin movie or whatever, because why not at this point? Samuel Jackson's a great actor. And then we move on to the final panel of the day, which was Ray Park, Prepare to be Mauled. Actually, I say final panel of the day, the stream is still going on now, so there might be another panel, but I think everything was pretty much wrapping up with this one. So, Ray Park, I got to meet him last year, I got his autograph, he signed a picture of Darth Maul for me, and I didn't really get to talk to him all that much. You can tell that he'd been there for hours. It's exhausting for everyone involved, so fair play to them for doing that. But Ray Park is always great with his fans. And so this was my first time seeing him at the panel. He did a panel last year, but I think I was at another panel that had time conflicts, so I chose to go to that rather than Ray Park. Apologies to Ray Park if you ever happen upon this podcast. But no, he's definitely a character. Like, when he entered the stage, he was acting like he was doing motion capture work for War of the Planet of the Apes or something. He was acting like a chimpanzee. He was doing the bow-legged walk. He was doing the chimp impressions. And right then and there, I was like, oh my god, this guy's bonkers. Or he's hyped up on so much energy drinks, or he's just done like 3 lines of cocaine before he's come out on stage to get through this fan experience. But I think that's just his character. He just thrives off being on stage and around his fans and chatting to people. And he did an interview with Warwick Davis, and you could tell that he is naturally a nervous guy, so maybe his overconfidence when he's doing sound effects and silly noises and jumping around and standing up from the couch and doing kung fu moves, maybe that's his way of dealing with it. I know some people with anxiety or aren't comfortable in situations like that have different ways of handling it, so that's fair enough. But, he was a fun guy, and he talked about his experience on Phantom Menace, the training regimen, how he was training, I think they said, 20 hours a day or something, which was incredible. He'd show up on set, he'd do his hours worth of training, and then after a completely exhausting day, he'd hit the gym right after, work on his gymnastic moves, get a couple of hours sleep, and then boom, be on set next day to do exactly the same thing again. So fair play to him, the dedication there. He talked about his history of getting into martial arts, and maybe this was just for the fans there, but he seemed genuine at the time. He said that Star Wars was a crucial factor into motivated him to get into martial arts. He was always a kung fu film fan, and you definitely got that impression from him. He was bringing up loads of kung fu films he grew up with. But he said the character of Luke Skywalker, he always wanted to play a Jedi. He never wanted to play Sith, he always wanted to play a Jedi. And unfortunately, he got his wish that he got to be in a Star Wars film. He got to have a quote-unquote real lightsaber, as much as a stick that's going to be enhanced in post-production with lighting and sound effects. But he loved it, and then it ended, and I think they did this last year where Warwick Davis brought a bunch of people up on stage, kids, adults, to do a little bit of a lightsaber training dojo, I guess. And Ray Park's actually a martial arts teacher now. I didn't know that about him, and he talked about his experience with that. And he just seemed like a really humble guy. He went up to everyone, he said hello, he gave them a high five, he shook their hand, he asked for their name. And it's really just simple qualities like that that do differentiate celebrities that think themselves it, because they've hit the big time, they think they're better than everyone else, and someone that's just really humble and down to earth. And that's how Ray Park struck me. So they recreated the Duel of the Fates fight, the ending where Qui-Gon dies, and he was teaching the moves to this guy, as well as demonstrating a series of moves to, you know, the kids and adults that were doing the demonstration with him. And actually there was this guy dressed as Kylo Ren that he was incredible. He was almost on par with Ray Park in terms of, you know, he could do the lightsaber flips and the windmills and the poses and everything like that. Like, he had it down. But this takes me back to my childhood as well, if I'm going to bring a bit of my personal history into it. I was that kid that with my best mate, you know, we both had lightsabers, or we'd find something that looked like a lightsaber, which usually resulted in snapping a broom handle off or finding whatever we could, and we'd demonstrate lightsaber moves and try and choreograph our own fights and stuff like that. I mean, we were in it. We were Star Wars fans, and you could tell that all these people were too. But this guy took it to a whole nother level. Like, I was willing to just bow down in front of this guy. He was incredible. And also, Ray Park in the interview actually let on to a bit of trivia that I wasn't aware of. He said that he cameoed in Phantom Menace as a different character. We all know, of course, that he played Darth Maul, but he played one of the Naboo soldiers at the very end of the film. It's right before Captain Panaka shoots out the window, and they have those grappling guns that take them up to the higher level of Theed Palace. And they slow-mo the video and showed it, so now I'm going to have that new bit of knowledge and new perspective whenever I watch Phantom Menace again. If I ever watch Phantom Menace again. No, that's being too harsh. Of course I'll watch Phantom Menace again, although it clearly isn't the best one of the saga. Everyone knows that. But then at the end as well, Warwick Davis was trying to wrap up. They're always to a time schedule, and Ray Park was just having none of it. He was fist bumping everyone on the front row of the crowd. You could tell he was really genuine, and that's what I really took away from the guy. He was really nice when I met him last year as well. I managed to get a picture with him. A lot of the people doing signings there were having none of it, probably because you had to buy a photograph for an outrageous amount of money. And after seeing the prices that they're charging at this year's celebration, I'm actually quite glad I went when I did last year before the prices hiked. But that was pretty much day one of Star Wars Celebration. So if I'm going to summarise my thoughts, all-round incredible opener for Star Wars Celebration, and I'm sure it's going to get better and better as the days go on. I think tomorrow might be the day, because I think tomorrow is going to be the Last Jedi panel. So I'm thinking we're going to get a trailer. Now, the trailer sadly won't be screened on the live stream that I watch, but I'm sure it's going to be put up on the internet immediately afterwards, and you know I'm going to be doing a reaction to that one, so look out for that. Hopefully tomorrow, if that is when the trailer is released. I would expect it would be. There were some other in-between bits as well during the live stream where you had these presenters, and oh god, they were there last year. I kind of want to wrap this video up, but I've got to talk about these presenters. These guys are terrible. These are some of the fakest, most insufferable, obnoxious, annoying people, cretins of human beings I've ever had the misfortune of seeing. They are awful presenters. Their fake energy is so irritating, and I know when you've got to present something, you've got to put that energy into it, you've got to put that passion into it, but it does seem like it is coming from a completely unfounded source. But anyway, I'm giving into my dark side right now. I will not give into anger. That was just an observation I wanted to make. So yeah, expect content out. Even if it's not every day, I will get a video out for every single individual day with the panels, with my thoughts on it. I've rambled for way too long, but it is nice to start talking about Star Wars again. I make that sound like it's been ages and ages since Rogue One, and it's really only been like, 4 months? That's way too long as a Star Wars fan, so I'm sure we're going to be getting The Last Jedi trailer tomorrow, or at least some news on it, or behind the scenes. It's a great time to be a Star Wars fan. I say that every year, but we are getting so much content. We are really being spoiled as fans, so that'll do it for my little breakdown, discussion, review, or summary of day one of Star Wars Celebration. Be sure to comment and subscribe. Let me know what you thought of today at Celebration. Have you watched the stream today? What did you think of the panels? What was your favourite part? What are you looking forward to? Or are you there at Celebration right now and have stumbled upon this video? Anything about Star Wars at all, please do drop me a comment. I love replying to you guys. I love getting a conversation going. So let's make it happen for Star Wars. So be sure to subscribe and hit that bell icon as well so you get a notification every time we put out new content. We have trailer reactions, we have movie reviews, and we're really ramping up the content now. So that'll do it for me, and until the next video, I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for listening.